This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted, as always, to be joined by Kevin Barry. Kevin, we're a few days after Wilder Fury 3, but first of all, as always, how you doing, mate? Nice to see you.
Mate, I'm doing good. More to the point, how are you doing? I know you've had a chest infection and before that you had problems with your lungs. Mate, I'm actually worrying that one of these times I'll be clicking the Zoom and you won't be there. For God's sake, sort yourself out, will you?
Well, thank you as always for your consideration to my well-being, but I'm doing well, thank you very much. Had a little bit of a chest infection recently, but I'm doing okay. Anyway, after all of that, Tyson Fury retained his WBC heavyweight title with a sensational 11th round knockout of Deontay Wilder. Kev, that was some fight.
Mate, that was one for the ages. You know, we got to witness one of the great boxing trilogies. And there's no doubt about it. When you look at it, you look at the 3 fights, 9 total knockdowns in 3 fights, you know, Fury down 4 times, Wilder down 5, just absolutely boxing at its best. And to be able to be there, to witness a fight like that, it just makes you feel good. It makes you know that boxing is strong. When the heavyweight division is pumping, all the other divisions are going well too. I think Tyson Fury showed that he stamped his position on world boxing. He is the number one. There is no doubt about that. He is the big dog in the division. And all credit to Wilder. He came prepared. He came in a very desperate position. He was trying to recover from the embarrassment of fight 2. His legacy was on the line, and he showed a lot of heart and a lot of character. And it was because of the depth of his pride within himself that he was able to last 11 rounds and make such a great classic fight of it.
I agree. And before we come on to talk about Deontay Wilder in the second half of the fight in particular, you, of course, played host to Mr. Tyson Fury for several days of his training camp when he was over in Las Vegas. Obviously, as always, seemingly in the build-up to Tyson Fury fights, there's all of these rumors or little whispers that seem to come out of his camp. Whether they're from him or not is another story. But what can you tell us about the camp going into the fight? What was really going on behind the scenes of Tyson's preparation?
Look, you know, to be completely honest, it was supposed to be a 5-week camp here in Vegas. He went back home to Manchester after getting COVID. His wife Paris had a child, and of course they had a few complications, and the baby was in the ICU for 2 weeks. So there wasn't a lot of training going on at the time. He ended up having a short camp back home, and the 5 weeks that he was supposed to spend here in Vegas turned into 3. And he did 2 weeks of sparring. All the sparring was done at the Team Barry gym. I think it would be fair to say that right up to fight day, he was probably playing catch up a little bit with his physical condition. You know, we had Sugar saying that he was going to come in at 20 pounds heavier than fight 2. Well, we knew that was never going to be the case. But he's a big guy. He looked strong in sparring. He looked very physical. But I think that he probably didn't put the same physical work in as he did for fight 2. And it was because of, you know, he had COVID, took him a while to get over that, and then the birth of his recent child. In saying that, this is Tyson Fury we're talking about. And this is the man who's from a different cloth than everybody else. And he was, for as long as the fight was going to go and whatever he had to do, he was going to have the mental strength and the self-belief and the fortitude to face and conquer anything that came his way. And, you know, we saw an amazing, masterful performance from him. I'm pretty sure that he wouldn't have been planning on getting sat on his backside twice in the 4th round. But, you know, that made for the spectacle. That made for this classic history-making boxing trilogy.
As Tyson likes to say, you can't go swimming without getting wet. And he certainly got wet in that 4th round.
He did. He most definitely did.
Before we move on, sticking with the Team Barry theme, running through Fury versus Wilder 3, your son, Taylor, of course, was part of Tyson Fury's corner last night. I'm sure you've caught up with Taylor since. What did he have to say on the whole night? What was the mood like within the camp on fight night?
Oh, very, very positive, very relaxed. Tyson was probably the most relaxed guy in the dressing room. And we know coming into this fight, I just talked before about him, probably not getting quite as much physical work in as he had done before. Didn't affect his mental preparation, didn't affect his confidence. Very loose and relaxed in the dressing room. A man who knew what he was facing, and a man who was prepared to do anything to get the right result. Tay had an amazing experience. This is the second time working in the Tyson's corner. He was there for the Otto Wallen fight as well. He has a special relationship with Tyson, and it's been one that's been great for this young man at the age of 26 to be in the corner for a history-making fight like this is very, very special. And, he's come a long way in the last 6 or 7 years. He's turned into a tremendous coach. And I know the future is going to be very good for him. He's going to be he'll be one of the young coaches of the future, that's for sure. And the confidence that being around Tyson gives a young man like this is unparalleled.
Well, obviously, pass on my congratulations. It's been a little while since I've seen Taylor, but hopefully not too long until I get back over there. Right, moving on to the fight itself. Much was made about Deontay Wilder coming into the fight, how he would approach the fight. We saw the videos of him working the body. We saw videos of him punching in combinations with Malik Scott. Came out in that first round, and it was a different Deontay Wilder. He was throwing the jab to the body and throwing the right hand to the body. What did you make of his game plan in that first round and for the remainder of the fight?
Look, I tell you what, I was impressed by his start. He had a very good first round, and coming out and throwing that left jab to the body was definitely, I could see it. It was Malik Scott. There was the influence of training with Malik, and the fact that he was prepared to follow a game plan from the get-go, I was very impressed with. I thought overall, Malik did a very, very good job with him. Let's remember, this is Deontay Wilder's 45th professional fight, and a lot of people were saying, well, we know that Malik's an experienced boxing guy, but he's not an experienced boxing coach. But I think there was definitely, you could see that Malik Scott definitely had an effect on Deontay Wilder, and this was overall, I think, his best performance in the 3 fights. I think the fact that when he got dropped in the 3rd round and was still able to be dangerous when I think Tyson thought he was going to walk through him, be dangerous and have the fortitude to be able to land that right hand twice in the 4th round. I think, a lot of that resilience and motivation and passion would have come from Malik in the corner. And I think the fact that after round 6, I looked at Wilder and I thought, he's done. He's completely done. And we saw Tyson beat him up ferociously, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think, okay, there was pride, there was legacy that he was fighting for, but I'm damn sure that, Malik was carrying him through a lot of those rounds. We know that Wilder said after fight 2, I'm a proud guy, let me go out on my shield. Well, he went out on his shield in a big way.
Just following on from that, we did a reaction show yesterday morning. The question kind of came up with, okay, all being said, after the second fight, he wanted to go out on a shield, but should the fight have been stopped? Do you think that there was an argument for the towel or maybe the referee to step in before the fight ended?
Look, 100%, but I think there was obviously a plan in place before the fight, an arrangement reached with trainer and manager, JDs, and with Wilder. No one throws the towel in. If I'm getting beat up, you better not throw the towel in. But I tell you what, there was several times later in the fight where I was sort of thinking the doctor may stop it here. We saw the doctor get into the ring a couple of times. There were a lot of big punches being bounced off the temples. of Wilder in those later rounds. And look, we know he's proud, but that you also have to think about longevity, and you have to think about your future after boxing. And I'll tell you what, looking at the way that Tyson knocked him out in the 11th round, the lights were out, the eyes were closed, he was rendered unconscious in a brutal, aggressive manner. If I was Deontay Wilder's family member or wife, or the people that he listens to the most, why would he ever want to fight again? We know this was a great trilogy, and we look at other great trilogies in the heavyweight division. Of course, the one that comes to mind the most is Ali Fraser. We've all grown up with it. We've all talked about it. We've seen it hundreds of times being replayed, and they were amazing fights. But the damage that was done to both those two guys in the 3 fights was unforgiving. And they were never, both guys were never the same again. Then you look at, another trilogy that was a proud trilogy in heavyweight boxing, Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe. Now, both those guys were never the same after that trilogy. Now we're placed with this amazing trilogy of Wilder and Fury. And we know that, we know Tyson Fury is a different human being. He's one of a kind. But I tell you what, I am damn sure Deontay Wilder is never going to be the same again after that fight on Saturday night.
You mentioned that there about Deontay Wilder. Of course, he did show enormous character, enormous heart to make it through to the end of the fight. Would you like to see him carry on? It seems to me like his stock won't go down at all after that fight. If anything, it'll go up, considering how exciting the fight was. Are there still fights out there that you'd like to see for him?
Look, 100%. But is that the right decision for Deontay Wilder? Those 3 fights with Tyson Fury have taken a lot out of him. He's 45 fights into his professional career. Was he 35 years old? He's made some very good money as a heavyweight champion and as a contender with Fury. Who would we want to see him fight? And why? What has he got to prove now? Do you think that he still has that burning desire to become heavyweight champion? That guy needs some time out of the ring. He just had 20 months out of the ring after fight 2. And we know he was thrown around like a rag doll in fight 2. But fight 3 was far more brutal, far more shocking, far more unforgiving on his body. So personally, I think his stocks are at the highest. I think the respect level that people have for Deontay Wilder right at this moment have wiped aside all the embarrassment from fight 2. I think that people respect him. They know that because he wouldn't quit, because he kept fighting, because he had the power to put Fury on the canvas twice, 4 times in 3 fights. Because of that, he has his respect. He has his mana back. I don't think there's anything else to prove. And this is my own personal opinion.
That being said, what next for Tyson Fury? Obviously, Dillian Whyte now is seemingly mandated, or will be mandated if he's able to come past Otto Wallin. Is that the fight that you want to see next? Is it the Alexander Usyk undisputed fight? What would you like to see next for Tyson?
Well, we're obviously not going to get the undisputed fight just yet. Joshua's obviously come back and exercised his right for a rematch, and he's talking about March or April. We know that the WBC have mandated the winner of Dillian Whyte and Otto Wallin to fight the winner of Wilder and Fury. So we have to wait for that fight to pan out, and then we'll see who Tyson's next opponent's going to be.
Assuming those fights go, I mean, I don't know about you, KB. A lot of people I'm speaking to are picking Alexander Usyk in a rematch. A lot of people would make Tyson Fury a considerable favorite against Dillian White. If that happens and we get Alexander Usyk versus Tyson Fury, how does that fight go, considering the fights that we've seen the last couple of weeks?
I think that let's see them both. Let's see Usyk Joshua fight again. Obviously, Joshua's going to have to change his whole game plan. He can't try and outbox a guy who has the skill level and boxing IQ of Usyk. So it'll be interesting to see whether he can be a big guy and get physical and aggressive. Personally, I think Usyk will grow more from that from his third fight at heavyweight and be even a more complete heavyweight fighter in the fourth fight. And I think it's going to be a very difficult fight for Joshua to win. When we talk about Dillian White and Otto Wallin, I've mentioned to you a couple of times, I think that Otto Wallin is really live in this fight and is a big, skillful southpaw who could really give Dillian White some trouble. Maybe we see Otto Wallin, the guy that split Tyson Fury's eye open. Maybe we see Fury Wallin again. I'm pretty sure that that was a night that Tyson probably wasn't very motivated. It took it for granted a little bit, got a little sloppy, and all of a sudden realized that he had a huge gash on his eye that he had to deal with. And he had a guy that was trying to take his head off and was a little bit better than he thought he was. So I think Tyson would love the opportunity of having another crack at Otto Wallin.
Well, we look forward to seeing how that plays out. Anyway, back to the fight itself. Well, not just the fight itself, but Tyson Fury in general. I mentioned before that Tyson has been based out in Las Vegas. You've seen him under different coaches, under Ben Davison, under now Sugar Hill. How good is Tyson Fury? I know it's difficult to compare fighters from different eras, but from what you've seen up close with him in the gym and what we've seen from him on fight nights, how special of a fighter are we talking about in your opinion?
I think he's very special. I think he's a one in a generation. And that's a big statement, when you're a generational fighter. You look at when he fought Vladimir Klitschko. Klitschko had reigned supreme for 10 years, made 20 world title defenses and was unbeatable. And Tyson gave him a terrible boxing lesson in his hometown. And then, Tyson goes through, the ups and downs and the emotional roller coaster of his life and, puts himself physically in a position where people said it's just a total impossibility for him ever to get back in the ring again. And he comes back into the ring, and in his third fight back, he fights, the biggest, most devastating on record puncher ever in the heavyweight division, and Deontay Wilder, and gives him a boxing lesson. I think, this guy is a special talent. And when you combine 6'9" and an 85-inch reach, a massive boxing IQ, mentally very, very strong, his determination and will to win at all costs, I think it makes him one of the great fighters of all time.
From a trainer's perspective, I just mentioned there Tyson under Ben Davison, which we saw in the first Wilder Fury fight, and of course Sugar Hill. Of course, not forgetting the work in the in the Vladimir Klitschko fight under his uncle Peter. How do you feel that he's evolved and improved as a fighter? Do you feel, particularly, namely, really, I'm talking here about Sugar Hill, the changes and developments in his style that he's been able to implement in these last couple of fights? Just how impressed have you been with that development?
Look, Tyson is I know he's developed and he's probably taken a bit of everyone. I thought that Ben Davison did a great job with him. Let's remember when he started back with Ben, as I mentioned before, he came from a position of impossibility. It was just he could never get back into the ring. He was so big, he put so much weight on, he had so many problems. And so I think you could never, ever underestimate the job that Ben did then. We look at, the work that Peter did with him, or, the family relationship. Peter's a very experienced trainer, and at the time there was no bigger fight in the heavyweight division than Klitschko and Fury, and they had a great game plan for that fight. Sugar Hill comes from the Kronk gym. Tyson at the time felt that he had a relationship with the Kronk gym going right back to Emmanuel Stewart, when Emmanuel picked him as a young man, that you will be the future of the heavyweight division. And we know that Emmanuel Stewart was like one of the great trainers and great boxing brains of all time. Sugar Hill's used a lot of that Detroit Kronk mannerisms and training methods to help Tyson. Tyson's also a fighter that he does a lot of his own training mentally. He's a guy who's a historian. He's a guy who studies. He studies styles. He studies the sport. I think when I talk about his boxing IQ, you can never underestimate the actual work that he puts in as a boxing fan and boxing historian. Sugar Hill's done a good job with him. I get a little, I know Sugar wanted him to punch a little harder. That jumping in with a 1-2 is something that sort of scares me a little bit. I'm from the school that, when you got a guy that's 6'9" and an 85-inch reach, you use that reach on the outside. I think there was no reason for Tyson to get clipped in round 4 of this fight and nearly throw the whole opportunity away. He should have got in behind his jab a little bit more. But that's Tyson. He likes to fight. And that's the style that's been introduced to him at the moment, and it's got him through an amazing trilogy. But, during that trilogy, he's had to pick himself up 4 times off the floor.
And again, you can't go swimming without getting wet. Okay, Kev, always a pleasure catching up with you. It's a shame they've had to do it over Zoom and not there in Vegas, but I'm sure I will catch up with you soon.
You better.
Well, hopefully, yeah.
By the time you get there, it'll be nearly Christmas. And, mate, I don't know if I could be cooking steaks outside in December. It might be a little chilly.
I don't know. Well, hopefully we get some plenty of Vegas fights next year and I can come over for those. But I look forward to it whenever it is.
Okay, mate. Hey, it's always a pleasure with you, Rob. And stay well and keep healthy, mate. And great to be on Boxing Social.